Welcome to The Pulse with Lauren Bango, a DLL podcast series. This is your place for tips, trends, and insights into the world of healthcare finance. Now, here's Lauren.
Welcome back. I am excited to be here in 2024 already. I can't believe it's already February, and joined today by Dave McGowan. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Lauren.
How are you?
I am excellent. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us. So Dave is one of our global account managers, managing our top accounts globally, and also our resident MES expert. So I think we should probably kick it off with just a little bit of background on you, and then we'll dive into what exactly MES stands for.
Sure. I'm a global account manager here at DLL. I've been with DLL 29 years now. So I've held a variety of positions, both started out in the credit group and then into operations, and have been in the commercial domain for since maybe 1999-ish. So my role has traditionally been program management, global account management, and new business development. Most of my career in the healthcare space with DLL, with a little sidebar into our food and ag division for 5 years. Mostly U.S. based, but did work in Europe at our headquarters. So I have some European experience. Was over there for about 4 years. It's been a great trip with DLL, and looking to see where we go next.
So cool. I don't think I realized you took a stint in food and ag. So very cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to chat through MES. So let's first dive into what that means and what is it?
Yes, so MES, Managed Equipment Services, that's how it's referred to by some folks. Some other folks may refer to it as a service agreement, a placement agreement, a usage agreement, or a system agreement. But basically, a Managed Equipment Services agreement is where they're trying to combine an offering to an end user that is more than just a lease. So it's a lease plus service, a lease plus something else. With the key thing being it's all negotiated on one document. So that process seems to be more condensed to review and put it together. So that's kind of where we come up with that term. It's broad in its description, because MES can mean a lot of things. So that's kind of where we get that term.
It sounds like it's a lot about customer experience, and
well,
am I hearing that right?
It is. So I think the MES concept really started to come to the forefront late 2000s, maybe early 2010s, where customers were just trying to say, listen, I want to connect with my vendor, and I want to get all of this together, and the experience being all in one shopping, solution provider, solution expectation, as opposed to having to negotiate a service agreement, negotiate a consumables agreement, and then go to a leasing company and do the lease. So it feels more streamlined and more comprehensive to put it all on one document.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. Is this segment specific? Is there only certain areas where this makes sense, or is it really kind of product and segment agnostic?
I would say it's becoming more end user segment driven. It's more or less being driven by end users who want to get all these things put together, and they want to sort of pay for what they use when they use it, all at the same time. So if you could imagine, an entity could be a pharma, could be a hospital, could be anybody who says, I'm doing these activities, I do them periodically, and when I do them, I consume something. So as I do them, I want to be billed for them and pay for them, and recognize the expense as the activity occurs, as opposed to having three distinctly separate events to have to pay for: the equipment lease, maybe the service agreement, and maybe some consumables that are ordered. So anybody who's looking to match activity to expense, this feels pretty like a dynamic thing that they want to do.
Awesome. And so we talked, you just mentioned a few things that can be included in an MES contract. So we talked about, lease payment terms. We talked about service. I think you mentioned disposables. What else is there?
Sometimes, when it's a really robust, comprehensive activity, it could include personnel or staffing. If you're really coming in with a solution to your customer who wants everything and pretty much is looking for you to outsource a lot of it into the vendor's hands, that could include personnel, could include uptime guarantees, could include equipment swap outs at periodic time frames so they have the latest and greatest technology. We've seen fairly basic ones and fairly robust ones, and you can imagine those ones that are more robust are fairly customized, bespoke, and more negotiated than a more vanilla or traditional sort of MES structure.
That's awesome. So, are you seeing specific trends with these in the market? Are there ways that they're evolving over time?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing, it started out as equipment and service, then it was equipment, service, and some consumables, which is still the most of what we see, but we're seeing more of the robustness with larger organizations who are looking to outsource a larger part of whatever they do, a department, a lab, a surgery center, or whatever. They're looking to match those activities into a larger, more comprehensive offer. And for some manufacturers, it's very attractive because you can imagine with such a large, comprehensive offer, you're likely to have a very good lock-in between the vendor and the end user for a long period of time when they're so comprehensive.
Yeah, it's sticky.
So it's very sticky. So if the end user's looking for that, that's a really important activity or opportunity for a vendor, because if they are successful, they're there. And if they're not successful, it's going to be really difficult to break through until that sort of time of that agreement expires.
As one of our vendor partners, if they don't already have this offering in their toolbox and they'd like to put it into their toolbox, what should they think about before starting to develop one? Any questions?
Yeah, that's the big question of the day, because you'll talk to a manufacturer and they all say, well, I want this managed equipment, or I want this placement program, I want this usage program. And the answer is why. What is the customer really looking to achieve here? And you have to be careful, because the customers say, I want a usage agreement and I only want to pay for our use, and that's all I want to do, pay for what I use with no more commitment than that, which is something that can be done. But for the manufacturer side, that is a non-committed sort of relationship. The customer can use or not use whatever they want to do. And if they're not using, what is the vendor going to do at that point if they're not using whatever equipment and services they're providing? So the critical piece is, what really does the customer want to do? Are they looking for a long-term commitment, and are they willing to commit to something? As long as you can package it together, great. I think that works for everybody, because I think the manufacturers want a commitment as well. But from there, how does that operate for the customer? What are they expecting from a billing for a procedure, a consumable, or is it a minimum? And what does that billing need to look like, and so they can understand what they're being billed for, and then make that payment to the lease.
Apologize for interrupting, but you could either split all of these portions out so you could see, what the cost associated with each portion is, or you could actually do a one bill, and I would expect that customers might want either or.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a perfect world for manufacturers and whoever's doing the financing, that splitting up is ideal, because everybody gets to see their part of the activity and can manage it. Will the customer be okay with that, or are they really looking for that, hey, just give me one payment for my fee per scan, my fee per procedure, my cost per consumable, and then manufacturer, you figure out how to apply that payment I make as I make it. So my experience is it's more that second scenario than that first scenario.
Right.
We'd like to think everybody likes to steer them towards that first scenario because it's cleaner from the parties who are providing the services. But the end users are really driving it towards that second thing where it's all together. I will make the payment, and you apply that payment accordingly to the consumable service, personnel, equipment, whatever needs to be divided up.
And I guess who does the billing and collecting for agreements like this?
Well, when it's that second scenario, when it's all together, you can imagine it'd be very, very difficult for a financing source to do all that because we don't have the data to make that invoice presentable to a customer that has all the detail that they're expecting on what they're paying. So we're seeing most of that burden shifting back to the manufacturer to do the administration and process all those things. And if there's an equipment piece that needs to be shared with a financing source, that is split out after they receive the payment and they send that payment to the financing source.
Got it.
So you can imagine that it's a very integrated relationship between the manufacturers and the end users. So as they do procedures, do whatever the consumable or activity is, how do they true it up? How do they recognize what was delivered? If there's calibration reads or scans that didn't go through, or a product that was shipped that was broken had to come back. All those are activities between the manufacturer and the end user that they got to sort out, and a funding source really can't resolve that. So that's another reason why a lot of those sort of billing activities stay with the manufacturer to make that customer experience seamless, because at the end of the day, the customer really wants to work with the manufacturer primarily. So it's a good connection point. Most of the activity sits there. And honestly, the end user probably has a low leverage point on the manufacturer too when they're doing all that for them.
And it keeps them sticky.
It does. It absolutely does. It absolutely does. But you can imagine from a manufacturer perspective, they really want that. Hey, I'm going to commit to X amount per year, and I'm going to commit to doing this for X many of years. So
right.
It works both ways. It's sticky for both that way.
No, agreed. So if one of our vendor partners doesn't have this in their toolbox, they've thought through some of these questions we just talked through, what do they do? What are their next steps to getting this set up?
Well, typically, it kind of goes back to if they think they need this, they need to have a sort of a cross-functional look at who's asking for this product and why, and is it scalable, or is it, and if it's scalable, can it be automated? If there's some manual work, what does that mean? What does it mean to revenue recognition, cash flow coming in, operational? And then they need to consult with a funding partner who knows how to do this and knows how to set it up, who can look at the end user contract that they're looking to put in front of a customer and say, is this an enforceable contract? That if you're looking to get funding up front, is it got a firm term, firm commitment? Does it have enough terms and conditions where a funding source would say, yes, I'm comfortable about. There's insurance in there, there's default language, there's remedies, all the sort of things that if a funder takes credit risk, if the deal falls over, can they go for their remedies, like a traditional sort of funding agreement. Typically they will not look like a traditional lease because it's got service, it's got everything else sort of commingled in there. So the vendor has to acknowledge that if the funding source is stepping in, the funding source is really taking credit risk. If the relationship falls over because the manufacturer didn't perform or deliver or do everything they said they would do outside of credit risk, there's typically some sort of indemnity back to the funding source that, hey, I did my part, I took the credit risk, but the deal fell over because something else happened outside my control.
That makes sense. Makes sense. So as a funding source, we are familiar, and I think I mentioned that you are a resident expert, so we obviously know how to do this. So if somebody wanted to get one of vendor partners wanted to put these into place here, they would just get in touch with their program manager, and they may actually get to meet Dave McGowan. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point. It certainly doesn't or need to be me, that's for sure. There's plenty of us that are just like me who know as much as I do. But yeah,
I don't know. You've got the fame now.
Well, yeah. But whoever steps in will really need to. I mean, the starting point is, what is the documentation going to look like that they're looking to put together, and is that a document that DLL or another funding source can really accept and fund and have enough comfort that they have it's enforceable. But from there, I mean, beyond that, it's really how do you link up the customer experience? How does the offer made? What are the requirements on servicing and billing and collection? And what is the best way for the best customer experience to connect with the operational processing for both the vendor and DLL? So it takes a little work. It takes a little due diligence. Some vendors are really set up well to do this, and for some, it's something that they've never thought of, but the competitive pressures are making them think of it, and then they have to go back and look at their internal, accounting processes, billing collection processes, how they would make this work. So it is certainly very collaborative. On the funding side, you'll need to get your credit and legal and ops teams involved to connect with their counterparts of the vendor to make sure that it's seamless and there's no sort of customer impact when we do this. It should be seamless to the end user.
That's awesome. Well, very cool. Thank you, Dave, very much. If you haven't listened to my podcast before, which I know you listen to every episode,
I wait desperately for them to drop. Yes,
I appreciate that.
Yes.
So the final ask at the end, and it can be regarding MES or anything else, is: do you have one piece of advice for our listeners?
I think my piece of advice is that this is going to become more prevalent rather than less. And really, the engagement with the sales, the commercial team who is trying to put this together to really understand the problem that's trying to be solved to meet the market is really important, and involve as many stakeholders, cross-functional stakeholders, as you think you need. It's I've seen it go where it was sort of a ready, shoot, aim. Went out there, thought they had a product, and when they started to doing it was not what the market or the customer really wanted, or it was something that the vendor really couldn't do. So it takes. I'd recommend taking a minute, pausing, getting involvement before launching.
Yeah, take the time to really make sure that the customer needs are being answered.
Yep, exactly.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Always available for more questions. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Pulse with Lauren Bango, a DLL podcast series. The opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the participants. Nothing herein should be construed as legal, tax, accounting, or investment advice. Join us again for the next edition of The Pulse. And thanks again for listening.